negating examiner who concluded this case.
Well, hi everyone, I'm back again, and my job now is basically to summarise the negative team's case and show you exactly why it is superior. And I'm going to do this by addressing three key questions. Is there any incentive for people to stay in New Zealand under the affirmative proposal? Is the onus on us to provide a counter-model? And thirdly, what are the detriments, if the affirmative proposal works, what are the detriments that would accrue in New Zealand society, both economically and socially? So to the first of these, is there any incentive for people to stay? Now this has started, well it actually started in my speech, but let's have a recap of what's actually going on. There's an option to sign a 15-year contract to trap you in New Zealand for further employment. Now, the first speaker said it was optional, and then we realised how sinister it actually was when the second speaker came up, because he effectively said that the government is taking advantage of 18-year-old pre-graduates before they know what they want to do, and getting them to sign this golden piece of paper, which is going to mean that they can overstaff specialist areas and effectively trap these people in New Zealand. Now, aside from the fact this isn't going to work, it's not actually a moral thing for a government to do, ladies and gentlemen, because this is effectively taking advantage of people at a time when they're not aware and they're not informed of what they're going to do. And yes, no specialised people can't see 15 years into the future, so as a result, the government is actually doing something which is dubious from a moral point of view. Perhaps not from a human rights point of view, as Rupert said, but definitely dubious from a moral point of view. Yeah, I know. Notwithstanding this, highly skilled people aren't going to sign this, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, really, it's absurd. They're signing their lives away and they have so many prospects ahead of them. It's just foolish. And more pertinently, we're talking about the small minority of people who are highly skilled and high achievers. The fact is, there's going to be a huge overlap between these number of high achievers and the people who get scholarships, which technically go to the high achievers. So what we're going to see is an overlap, huge overlap, between people who are going to get their university fees paid anyway, and so there's not even going to be an incentive for these people because they can easily receive scholarships. So on the most fundamental level, ladies and gentlemen, the affirmative team have failed in their duty. Onus issues aside, they've produced a completely unworkable and ineffectual model, and I'm sure that's something that everybody in the audience here can understand and realise. Now, the third speaker came up rather untimely, really, and vomited up issues of onus, which is really a sign of a dying affirmative team. So I'll ask the question, is the onus on us to provide a counter-model? I guess that he was referring to this to detract from the dismal model, which is essentially a dithering government grovelling at the feet of those who are highly skilled to stay in New Zealand with the prospect of paying the university fees. But we've always said that brain drain is something which will always happen in New Zealand. It's inherent. It's natural. We have 4 million people. We have no economies of scale, which means lower wages, fewer job opportunities. It's inherent. But the government does take steps to combat it, and this is something missed by the affirmative. They already have. The scholarship exam remuneration, which is very significant, is tagged to New Zealand universities in the hope that they will stay. There's subsidies and interest-free loans on New Zealand tertiary education in the hope that they'll stay. Most scholarships to New Zealand universities are tagged to stay in New Zealand, and government has been trying to increase the attractiveness of New Zealand employment. They have done so much to target this brain drain, but the government can only do so much. And on a serious note, there is a point at which the government has to stop in trying to target this. It is a truism, and it is something inherent in the system. And to this extent, we would say the government has done basically all they can to target this, but it's still going to go ahead. And the point at which we stop is where the affirmative have given this ridiculous proposal. So how dare they expect us to solve this truism? How dare they expect us to increase New Zealand's job opportunities, increase New Zealand's wages, and stop people from taking advantage of New Zealand job opportunities? That's just not our onus, ladies and gentlemen, and that's where the affirmative team has also failed. So, if this were to work, let's have a look at some of the detriments that would accrue. If it did incentivise people to go through university and then furthermore to stay in New Zealand, what would happen? Well, actually, we'd probably be overstaffed over a long period of time in specialist areas because they are specialised areas. We would increase the number of degrees in New Zealand, thereby decreasing their value because basically everyone would have one if they're going for free. Standards would drop in university courses and overall the quality of degrees would drop, and that's not a good thing, neither for employees nor employers. And aside from this, there's just the gigantic cost, ladies and gentlemen, of funding this. I mean, if it were to go ahead, which we've clearly shown that it's not going to, if it were to go ahead on the most fundamental level, the cost of this is so high and so significant in the New Zealand climate that it's just unworkable and not justified, given the significant detriments and lack of need for this. So what have we outlined? We've outlined, firstly, that the affirmative model just isn't going to work. And secondly, that even if it did work, it won't accrue the benefits that the affirmative have asserted, and for that reason, the moot must fall.